The taxi pulled up to my circular driveway at exactly 6:15 on a Thursday evening, and I felt my stomach drop before my brain could even process what was wrong with the picture in front of me. My son Damien stepped out of that yellow cab, closing the door behind him with a tired slump to his shoulders, and for a moment I just stood there on my front steps, frozen with a wine glass in my hand, trying to understand what I was seeing. 3 months ago, I had given my only son a Ferrari 488 Spider for his 32nd birthday. Red, gorgeous, $340,000 that I had earned every single cent of through decades of backbreaking work, building my real estate empire from absolutely nothing. I had watched his face light up like a child's when I handed him those keys, and I remembered thinking that maybe, just maybe, I was finally doing this mother thing right. And now he was arriving at our weekly dinner in a taxi. "Damien?" My voice came out higher than I intended, carrying across the perfectly manicured lawn that my landscaper had just finished that afternoon. "Sweetheart, what happened to your car?" He opened his mouth to answer, but before a single word could escape, Sienna appeared behind him. My daughter-in-law of 3 years materialized at his elbow with that smile I had learned to distrust, that sweet, practiced expression that never quite reached her eyes. She was wearing a cream-colored dress that I knew cost $1,800 because I had paid for it last month when she mentioned wanting something special for a client meeting that never seemed to happen. "Oh, the Ferrari?" Sienna's voice was bright, cheerful, like she was discussing the weather or what we might have for dinner. "The car is actually with my mom now, Margot. She really needed reliable transportation, and well, Damien doesn't really need such an extravagant vehicle anyway. Family is family, right? We should all share what we have. I want you to understand something about that moment. I have been through a lot in my 57 years on this earth. I immigrated to this country when I was 6 years old, barely speaking English, wearing second-hand clothes that didn't fit right. I worked my first job at 16 as a receptionist, answering phones for men who looked right through me like I was furniture. I built Sinclair luxury properties brick by brick, deal by deal, sacrificing sleep and comfort and sometimes dignity to become one of the most successful real estate developers in Connecticut. I buried my husband Richard 4 years ago after watching a heart attack steal him from me in 37 seconds. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared me for the sensation that went through my body when those words registered in my brain. "The car is with my mom now." My mouth opened but no sound came out. I felt something hot and cold at the same time spreading through my chest, crawling up my throat. The wine glass in my hand suddenly felt like it weighed 50 pounds. I looked at my son, searched his face for shock, for outrage, for some indication that he was about to correct this insane statement. But Damien just stood there with his eyes on the ground, his shoulders slumped even further, looking like a dog that had been kicked too many times to bother yelping anymore. "I'm sorry. What did you just say?" I finally managed to get the words out, and I was grateful that my voice sounded steadier than I felt. 20 years of negotiating million-dollar deals teaches you how to hide panic behind a calm exterior. Sienna's smile didn't falter. If anything, it brightened, like she genuinely believed what she was saying was perfectly reasonable. Delphine really needed a car, Margot. Her old Mercedes was having issues, and you know how difficult things have been for my parents since the financial crisis. When you think about it, it just makes sense. You have so much, and they have so little. The Ferrari is just sitting in our garage most of the time anyway, because Damien takes the train to work sites. My mom will actually use it and appreciate it. I stared at her. Actually stared, the way you stare at something your brain can't quite categorize. A $340,000 car that I had purchased, that I had chosen specifically because Damien mentioned once, just once, that he had always dreamed of owning a Ferrari since he was a little boy. That car that represented not just money but memory, that represented me trying to make up for all the birthdays I missed while building my company, all the school plays I couldn't attend because I was closing deals. That car was now with Delphine Rosewood, the woman who could barely look at me without a sneer playing at the corners of her mouth. The woman who made pointed comments at every family gathering about how some people were so fortunate while others struggled despite being just as deserving. How? The word came out flat, emotionless. How is the car with your mother, Sienna? Well, we transferred the title, obviously. She said it like I was being slow, like I wasn't understanding basic arithmetic. Damien signed the paperwork last week. It's all legal and done. My mom picked it up yesterday morning, and she's absolutely thrilled. She drove it to her book club, and everyone was so impressed. You should have seen her face, Margot. You know how much joy can mean to someone who's been through difficult times. I looked at Damien again. You signed paperwork to transfer the Ferrari to Delphine? He finally met my eyes, and what I saw there made my heart crack. Exhaustion. Defeat. Something that looked uncomfortably like shame. Mom, I didn't know that's what I was signing. Sienna brought me some documents after I got home from a 14-hour shift on the waterfront project. She said they were insurance updates, and I signed them. I was so tired, I didn't read them carefully. He signed them, Sienna interjected smoothly, because he agreed that family should help family. Right, honey? She squeezed his arm, and I watched my son flinch. Actually flinch. The world had gone very quiet. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, slow and heavy. I could hear the irrigation system clicking on in the garden beds, could hear a car passing on the street beyond my property gates. Everything felt hyper-real and surreal at the same time, like I was watching this scene happen to someone else, some other woman standing on her front steps, holding a glass of wine while her family imploded in front of her. Get in the house, I said quietly. Both of you. Now. I turned and walked through my front door, not waiting to see if they followed. My hands were shaking, but I kept them steady as I set down the wine glass on the entry table, next to the fresh flower arrangement that my housekeeper had put there this morning. White peonies. Richard always loved white peonies. I heard them follow me into the house, heard Sienna's heels clicking on my marble floors, heard Damien's heavier footsteps, slower, reluctant. I walked straight through the foyer, past the formal living room that we never used, into my study, my sanctuary, the room where I had built my empire, where every single decision that made me wealthy had been carefully calculated and executed. I turned to face them. Sienna still had that smile plastered on her face. Damien looked like he wanted to disappear through the floor. Sit down, I said. They sat. Sienna perched on the edge of my leather sofa like she was attending a pleasant social visit. Damien sank into the chair by my desk, with his head in his hands. I stayed standing. Standing felt important. Standing felt like maintaining the last shred of control I had over a situation that was spiraling into absolute chaos. Let me make sure I understand correctly. My voice was calm. So calm. 20 years of negotiating had taught me that the quieter you speak, the more carefully people listen. You took a gift that I gave to my son. A gift worth $340,000. A gift that had enormous sentimental value because it represented his childhood dream and my attempt to show him how much I love him. And you transferred it to your mother, without asking me, without discussing it with me, without apparently even having an honest conversation with Damien about what he was signing. Well, when you put it like that, it sounds bad. Sienna's smile had finally faltered, just slightly. But Margot, you have to understand the bigger picture here. You have $18 million. My parents lost almost everything in 2008. You have this mansion, you have the beach house in the Hamptons, you have investment properties all over Connecticut and New York. One car is nothing to you. But to my mother, it's everything. It's dignity. It's proof that life can still be beautiful after loss. Something inside me snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a quiet, clean break, like a bone fracturing deep under the skin where no one can see it. Get out, I said. Sienna blinked. Excuse me? Get out of my house, now. You have exactly 60 seconds to leave before I call the police and have you removed for trespassing. Trespassing? She laughed. Actually laughed. Damien is your son. I'm your daughter-in-law. This is family property. This is my property. My name on the deed. My money that purchased it. My house. And you are not welcome here anymore. I turned to Damien. You can stay. In fact, I need you to stay. We need to talk. But she leaves. Mom, Damien started. Now! The word came out louder than I intended, echoing off the walls of my study, bouncing off the bookshelves filled with real estate law and business strategy, rattling against the framed photographs of properties I had developed. Get her out of my house, Damien, or I will physically remove her myself, and I promise you it will not be gentle. Sienna stood up, and for the first time, I saw the mask slip, saw something cold and calculating flash across her pretty face. You're making a huge mistake, Margot. You're going to regret this. The only thing I regret, I said quietly, is not seeing you for what you are 3 years ago. Now get out before I add a restraining order to my evening plans. She looked at Damien, waiting for him to defend her, to choose her. But my son sat there with his head still in his hands, not moving, not speaking. After a long moment, Sienna grabbed her designer purse and walked out, her heels clicking angrily against my marble floors. I heard the front door slam hard enough to rattle the windows, and then it was just me and my son in the heavy silence that followed. I walked to my desk, opened the bottom drawer, and pulled out the bottle of whiskey I kept there for particularly difficult negotiations. Poured 2 glasses, handed one to Damien. Drink, I said, and then you're going to tell me everything. And I mean everything. How long has this been going on? What else has she taken? What else have you signed? Damien took the glass with shaking hands and downed it in one swallow. When he looked up at me, there were tears in his eyes. I don't know, Mom. I honestly don't know anymore. I feel like I've been sleepwalking through my own life for the past year, and I just woke up standing on the edge of a cliff. I sat down across from him and reached for his hand. Then we figure it out, together. But first, I need to know exactly how deep this goes. He started talking. And with every word, with every revelation, I felt that clean break inside me spread. Felt its spiderweb through my chest, through my carefully constructed image of happy family and successful son and peaceful widowhood. By the time he finished, I knew exactly what I was dealing with, and I knew exactly what I was going to do about it. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my study with a second glass of whiskey and watched the security camera footage from my driveway play on loop, watching that yellow taxi pull up over and over again, watching my son step out looking defeated, watching Sienna emerge behind him with that smile. But my mind wasn't really on the present. It had traveled backward, tracing the threads that had led us to this moment, trying to pinpoint exactly where I had gone so catastrophically wrong. I built my empire from nothing, and I mean nothing. My parents brought me to this country when I was 6 years old, with 2 suitcases and $300 between them. My father worked in a warehouse. My mother cleaned houses for wealthy families in Greenwich, the same neighborhood where I now owned one of the most expensive properties on the block. The irony wasn't lost on me. I started working at 16 because we needed the money. Receptionist at a small real estate office in Stamford, answering phones and filing paperwork while the mail agents closed deals and collected commissions. I watched them work, studied them, learned their tactics, their language, their strategies. By 23, I had my real estate license. By 30, I had my own small firm. By 45, Sinclair Luxury Properties was managing over $200 million in high-end residential properties across Connecticut and New York. I married Richard when I was 28. He was a good man, a kind man, an accountant who helped me build the financial structure of my growing company. We had Damien 2 years later, and I remember thinking I could have it all. The business, the family, the American dream my parents had sacrificed everything to give me. But you can't have it all. Not really. Something always suffers, and in my case, it was time. Time with Richard. Time with Damien. I missed his first steps because I was closing a deal in Manhattan. Missed his kindergarten graduation because I was negotiating a property acquisition in the Hamptons. Missed so many dinners, so many bedtimes, so many little moments that you can never get back. Richard never complained. He understood ambition because he shared it in his own quieter way. He became the primary parent, the one who packed lunches and attended parent-teacher conferences and coached Little League. I became the one who provided everything else: the private schools, the nice house, the summer camps, the college tuition at Cornell where Damien studied civil engineering. I told myself I was doing it for them, told myself that financial security was love in action, told myself that one day I would slow down, spend more time, be more present. And then Richard died, 4 years ago. 4 years, 2 months, and 16 days, if I'm being precise, which I always am. We were having dinner, just the 2 of us, a rare quiet evening at home. He was telling me about Damien's new girlfriend, a sweet girl named Sienna, who worked in interior design and had impressed Richard with her knowledge of architectural styles. He was mid-sentence when he stopped, put his hand to his chest, and looked at me with such surprise in his eyes. He was dead before the ambulance arrived. Massive heart attack, 59 years old. The guilt nearly destroyed me. All those missed moments, all that time I told myself we'd have later when the business was more stable, when I could afford to step back. Later never came. So I threw myself into Damien, tried to make up for decades of absence with overwhelming presence. He was 28, just starting his career as a civil engineer, dating Sienna seriously. I inserted myself into their lives with the subtlety of a bulldozer. Dinner every week, phone calls every day, and gifts. So many gifts. I bought them their house, a beautiful 4-bedroom colonial in Westport, $2 million, fully furnished, paid in cash. Put it in Damien's name. I told myself it was a practical gift, a smart investment, helping my son build equity. But really, I was trying to buy back time I couldn't have. Sienna seemed perfect at first. She was attentive to Damien, charming with me, enthusiastic about family dinners. She had good taste, talked knowledgeably about design and architecture, seemed genuinely interested in my business stories. When they got engaged after a year of dating, I was thrilled. My son would have the partnership I'd had with Richard, the support system that makes success possible. The wedding was beautiful, $50,000 at the Greenwich Country Club. I paid for everything, told them to save their money for their future. Sienna's parents attended, and that was my first real glimpse of what was coming, though I didn't recognize it then. Delphine and Thomas Rosewood, old money that wasn't old anymore. Thomas had owned an investment firm that collapsed in the 2008 financial crisis, taking their comfortable lifestyle with it. They still lived in a nice house in Stamford, still dressed well, still maintained the appearance of wealth, but it was all surface. Underneath, they were drowning in debt and resentment. Delphine made comments, little needling observations wrapped in pleasant tones. How wonderful that Damien has such a generous mother. Some of us had to actually work for what we have, but I suppose there are different paths to success. And my personal favorite, delivered with a bright smile at the rehearsal dinner. At least Sienna won't have to sacrifice family time for career ambition. She can be a real mother to her future children. I should have seen the warning signs, but I was too focused on making Damien happy, on compensating for my absence during his childhood, on proving I could be the mother I hadn't been when it mattered. After the wedding, I set up monthly deposits. $8,000 directly into their joint account. I told Damien it was to help them get established, to ease the financial pressure of starting married life. What I didn't realize until tonight was that Sienna had convinced him the money was her income from freelance design work. He genuinely had no idea that 70% of their household income came from me. The gifts continued. Her car, a BMW X5, $60,000. Furniture for their house when she decided she wanted to redecorate. Jewelry for birthdays and holidays. A 2-week vacation to Italy last year, $20,000, because Sienna mentioned she'd always dreamed of seeing Venice. And then the Ferrari. Damien's 32nd birthday, 3 months ago. I had asked him what he wanted, and he'd laughed and said, "I used to dream about owning a Ferrari when I was a kid. Red one, like in the posters I had on my wall. So I bought him one. $340,000. I still remember his face when I gave him the keys. The pure joy, the disbelief, the way he hugged me and said, 'Mom, this is too much, you shouldn't have.' But I wanted to, because it made him happy, because it made me feel less guilty about all those missed moments, because maybe, just maybe, it meant I was finally getting this right. I started noticing things changing about 6 months after the wedding. Small things at first. Sienna mentioning repeatedly how difficult things were for her parents. How unfair it was that some people had so much while others struggled. How family should take care of family. Then gifts I'd given her started disappearing. A Cartier bracelet I'd given her for their first anniversary. I must have left it at the gym, she said. A Tiffany necklace for Christmas. I think it fell off at a restaurant. Looking back now, I realized she was testing me, seeing how much she could take before I noticed or cared. I did notice, but I didn't say anything because I didn't want to cause conflict. Didn't want to be the difficult mother-in-law. Didn't want to risk pushing Damien away. That silence cost me. Cost him. Cost us both more than I could have imagined. Damien started changing too. Became quieter during our dinners. Less engaged. Always tired. Always stressed. I attributed it to his demanding job, to the pressures of marriage and adult life. Never occurred to me that my son was being systematically manipulated and controlled by the woman he loved. The worst part, the part that kept me awake now at 3 a.m. staring at my computer screen, was that Sienna had been smart about it. She'd isolated him gradually, made him dependent on her emotionally while making their lifestyle dependent on my money without him realizing it. She'd positioned herself as the interpreter between us, controlling information flow, shaping narratives, and I'd let it happen. Because I was afraid of losing the only family I had left, afraid that if I pushed too hard or questioned too much, Damien would choose her over me, and I'd end up alone in this big house with nothing but my money and my regrets. Fear makes you blind, makes you complicit in your own destruction. But tonight, sitting in my study with whiskey burning in my throat and rage burning in my chest, I wasn't afraid anymore. I was awake, fully, completely awake for the first time in 3 years, and I was done being blind. I opened my laptop and started making phone calls. First to my lawyer, James Patterson, who'd handled my business affairs for 20 years. Left him a voicemail asking for an emergency meeting first thing in the morning. Then to Daniel Morrison, a private investigator I'd used occasionally for business due diligence. Left him a message too. Then I pulled up my bank records, started going through every transaction from the past 3 years, every deposit to Damien's account, every gift purchase, every payment for their house, their cars, their lifestyle. The numbers made me sick. Over $1 million in 3 years, not including the house, not including the Ferrari. My phone buzzed at 4 a.m. Text from Damien. Can't sleep? Still at your house? In the guest room. We need to talk more tomorrow. I'm so sorry, Mom. I texted back. Nothing to be sorry for. You're a victim here too. We'll fix this, I promise. Because that's what I do. I fix things. I build things. I protect my investments. And my son was the most important investment I'd ever made. The sun was starting to rise when I finally closed my laptop. I hadn't solved anything yet. Hadn't figured out the full scope of the damage or the path forward. But I had clarity. And I had resolve. And I had resources. Sienna Rosewood had made a critical miscalculation. She'd assumed that my generosity meant weakness, that my guilt made me controllable, that my love for my son would keep me passive and compliant. She was about to learn the difference between a woman who gives freely and a woman who can be taken from, and it was going to cost her everything. Daniel Morrison called me back at 7 a.m. I hadn't slept, but I'd showered and dressed in one of my power suits, navy Armani with a crisp white blouse. If I was going to war, I was going to look the part. Margot, got your message. Sounded urgent. Daniel's voice was gravelly, professional. We'd worked together on 3 complicated business situations over the years. He was discreet, thorough, and expensive. Worth every penny. I need a complete investigation. My daughter-in-law and her mother. Financial records, phone records if you can get them legally, surveillance, everything. I need to know exactly what they've been doing, what they're planning, and what evidence exists that I can use. There was a pause. This is personal. Very personal. And Daniel, I need it fast. I have a feeling time is critical here. Give me 72 hours. I'll start with public records and work from there. Send me everything you have. Names, addresses, dates, transactions. I spent the next hour compiling a detailed file. Every gift, every payment, every interaction I could remember. Dates, amounts, context. I was good at documentation. It's what made me successful in business. Damien emerged from the guest room around 8, looking like he hadn't slept either. His eyes were red, his hair a mess. He was still wearing yesterday's clothes. Coffee? I asked. He nodded. We sat in my kitchen, the morning light streaming through the windows overlooking my garden. Under different circumstances, it would have been peaceful. Tell me about the other things, I said quietly. What else did she have you sign? What else is missing? He wrapped his hands around the coffee mug like he needed its warmth. I don't know exactly. Over the past year, she's brought me documents several times, always when I was exhausted from work. Always saying they were routine, insurance updates, account changes, that kind of thing. I just signed them, Mom. I trusted her. What about money? Are you aware of what's actually in your accounts? He shook his head. Sienna handles all that. She said I should focus on work and she'd manage the household finances. I thought that made sense. She's organized, detail-oriented. Damien, do you know where your income actually comes from? He looked confused. My job. I make $90,000 a year as an engineer. And Sienna told you she makes how much from her design work? She says it varies, maybe $60,000 or $70,000 annually. Some months are better than others. I took a breath. Honey, I've been depositing $8,000 a month into your joint account for 3 years. That's $96,000 a year, from me. Sienna has been telling you that's her income. I watched the color drain from his face. What? You're living on my money. Have been since you got married. I set it up to help you both get started, but she never told you. She let you believe you were supporting yourselves. He stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against my tile floor. Walked to the window, his back to me. His shoulders were shaking. Damien, I'm 32 years old. His voice cracked. I thought I was building a life. I thought I was being a man, a husband, a provider. And I'm just… What? A child playing house with his mother's money? You are building a life. You have a real career, real skills. This isn't about you. This is about her lying to both of us. He turned around, and I saw something I hadn't seen in his face since he was a little boy. Pure, devastated confusion. Why would she do that? If she wanted money, she could have just asked me, asked us. We could have talked about it, because talking means partnership. What she wanted was control. My phone rang. James Patterson, my lawyer. Margot, got your message. What's the emergency? I need you to review some legal documents. I believe my son was tricked into signing transfer paperwork for a vehicle without understanding what he was signing. I want to know what our options are. I also need you to review my estate planning and make some immediate changes. Come to my office at 10. Bring your son and any documentation you have. I hung up and looked at Damien. Get showered. Change into the spare clothes you keep here. We have an appointment with my lawyer in 2 hours. Mom, I need to call Sienna. She's probably worried. She's probably celebrating. She got exactly what she wanted. Your mother humiliated, you isolated from me, and a $340,000 car for her mother. You don't know that. Maybe this was just a misunderstanding. I wanted to shake him. Instead, I walked over and took his face in my hands, the way I did when he was small. Baby, I know you love her. I know you want to believe the best. But I need you to think clearly right now. Has she ever done anything that made you uncomfortable? Anything that felt manipulative or controlling? He closed his eyes. She tracks my location on my phone. Says it's for safety. She gets upset if I don't text her back within 10 minutes. She's told me several times that I shouldn't talk to you about money or our finances because it's private, between us as a couple. She's suggested twice that maybe we should move farther away, maybe to North Carolina where her cousin lives for a fresh start. Each sentence was a knife in my chest. She's been isolating you. Or I'm a terrible husband who doesn't communicate enough. No. Listen to me. You are not the problem here. Trust your instincts. What does your gut tell you? He opened his eyes, and they were full of tears. That I've been a fool. No. You've been a man in love who trusted his wife. That's not foolish. That's human. We drove to James Patterson's office in downtown Greenwich. My lawyer was in his 60s, silver-haired, sharp as a knife. He'd guided me through every major business decision for 2 decades. He listened to everything. The Ferrari, the forged signature, the hidden income, all of it. Took notes in his precise handwriting. When we finished, he sat back in his leather chair and steepled his fingers. The vehicle transfer is problematic, but potentially actionable. If Damien can prove he signed under false pretenses, believing the documents were for insurance purposes, we might be able to challenge it. However, it will be expensive and time-consuming, and there's no guarantee of success. What if we just demand they return it and threaten criminal charges for fraud? I asked. You could try. If they refuse, you'd need to follow through on the criminal complaint, which means police, potential charges, a legal battle that could take years. Is that really what you want? I looked at Damien. He looked sick. What about protecting Damien's assets going forward? I asked. That's simpler. We need to separate finances immediately. Damien needs his own account that Sienna has no access to. We should review what other documents he's signed. And frankly, given what you've told me, I'd recommend considering separation or divorce. Damien flinched. I can't just divorce her over a misunderstanding. Son, James said gently, this isn't a misunderstanding. This is a pattern of financial manipulation. I've seen this before. It usually gets worse, not better. We left his office with a plan. New bank account for Damien. Request all documents from Sienna regarding what he'd signed. Formal letter demanding return of the Ferrari within 48 hours, or we'd pursue legal action. And I had another appointment that afternoon with Daniel Morrison. Daniel's office was in a nondescript building in Stamford. He'd started pulling information already, working through the night after my call. Preliminary findings, he said, spreading papers across his desk. Delphine and Thomas Rosewood are in serious financial trouble. They're 3 months behind on their mortgage. Have $60,000 in credit card debt. Thomas hasn't held steady employment since his firm collapsed. He does occasional consulting, brings in maybe $20,000 a year. Delphine doesn't work. How are they surviving? Good question. Their mortgage payment alone is $4,000 a month and they're behind, so something's keeping them afloat. My guess? Your money, filtered through Sienna. He pulled up photos on his computer. Surveillance shots. This is Delphine at a pawn shop in Stamford 3 months ago. High-end jewelry shop. She sold several pieces. I spoke to the owner, showed him photos. He identified 2 Cartier bracelets and a Tiffany necklace. Total payout, $47,000. My jewelry, the gifts that had disappeared. There's more. I pulled phone records, the ones that are publicly accessible through court filings from Thomas's bankruptcy case. Sienna and Delphine talk daily, sometimes multiple times a day. Call durations suggest these aren't quick check-ins. Can you get actual recordings of the calls? Not legally, not without a warrant, but I have another option. Sienna's phone is on a corporate plan, right? You pay for it? Yes, I set it up for her so-called design business. Then you own the account. You can request records from the carrier, everything except the actual content of calls. But texts, that's different. If she backed up to a cloud service on a corporate account you own, those might be accessible. Do it. Whatever you need to do that's legal, do it. He nodded. I'll have more in 48 hours. But Margot, you should prepare yourself. Whatever we find, it's probably going to be worse than you think. People who do this level of manipulation, they're usually planning long-term. This isn't just about a car. I drove home feeling sick. Stopped at a red light and saw my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked old, tired. How had I let this happen? Damien had gone back to his house to get clothes and have what he called a conversation with Sienna. I'd told him to be careful, to not reveal what we knew yet. Just observe, listen, pay attention. He called me at 5 in the evening. His voice was shaking. Mom, you need to hear this. I recorded it. I know maybe I shouldn't have, but I needed proof. For myself. What happened? I told her I wanted to talk about the Ferrari. Asked her to explain what happened, to walk me through it. She was so calm, Mom, so rational sounding. She said you were being unreasonable, that you were trying to control our lives through money, that the Ferrari was just the latest example of you using wealth to manipulate me. She said her mother deserved something nice after everything she'd been through, and that I should be man enough to stand up to you. What did you say? I asked her about the $8,000 a month. Asked where she told me that money was coming from. Silence on the line. Damien? She didn't even blink, Mom. She said, that's my income from design work, you know that. I asked to see her business accounts, her invoices, her client list. She said I was being controlling and paranoid, that you had poisoned me against her, that I was choosing my mommy over my wife. His voice broke on the last word. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. She said, maybe your mother's right. Maybe we should just end this now. I'll take what I'm legally entitled to and move on. At least then, you'll be free to run back to Greenwich and let Margot control every aspect of your life forever. She threatened divorce, as leverage, to make me back down. And Mom, the way she said it, like she'd already calculated what she'd get, like she'd been planning it. Where are you now? Still at the house. She's in the bedroom. I'm in the living room, I don't know what to do. Pack a bag. Come back here tonight. Don't discuss it, don't argue, just tell her you need space to think. She'll lose it. Let her. You don't owe her comfort right now. You owe yourself truth. He showed up at my door an hour later with a duffel bag and eyes that had cried themselves dry. We sat in my living room, and I held my son while he processed the destruction of his marriage. I keep thinking about moments, he said quietly. Little things that didn't make sense at the time. How she always wanted to know where I was, who I was with. How she'd get upset if I spent time with my college friends. How she slowly stopped inviting them over. How she always had an excuse when I suggested we visit you without her. How she handled all the mail, paid all the bills, controlled all the information. It's called isolation. It's what manipulators do. They cut you off from everyone who might help you see clearly. I thought it was just her being organized, being helpful, taking care of things so I didn't have to worry. That's what she wanted you to think. My phone buzzed. Text from Daniel. Call me, now. It's important. I stepped into my study and called him back. I got into the cloud backup of her phone. Margot, this is bad. Really bad. There are text messages between Sienna and Delphine going back 2 years. They're planning this, all of it. Send me everything. I'm sending it to your secure email now. But there's something else. Something you need to know before you read these. What? Sienna's been seeing a fertility doctor, running tests, but not with Damien. My heart stopped. What do you mean? She's been getting fertility testing done, but Damien isn't part of it. She's doing it separately. And according to text messages with her mother, she knows Damien has low sperm count. Knew it 6 months ago. He thinks it's secret, but she found out somehow. And she's using it. Using it how? Read the messages. They're planning to use his infertility as grounds for divorce, claiming failure to provide children. They've already consulted with a lawyer about how much she can get in the split. In Connecticut, even with a prenup, which they don't have, she could get a significant settlement after 3 years of marriage, especially if she can prove she sacrificed career opportunities. I sat down hard in my desk chair. How did she find out about his medical condition? Best guess? She either followed him to a doctor's appointment or intercepted mail. Maybe both. These people are thorough, Margot. And they've been planning this for a long time. The emails came through. I opened them, started reading. Text from Sienna to Delphine, dated 8 months ago. Found out D has fertility issues. He's seeing specialist in Manhattan, paying cash, so I won't see bills. Idiot doesn't realize I check his wallet. This is actually perfect for us. When we divorce, I can claim he withheld important information. Lawyer says it strengthens my position. Delphine's response, excellent, but don't rush it. We need to maximize asset transfer first. How much more can we get before pulling trigger? Another exchange, 4 months ago. Sienna. Margot's such a doormat. Got her to pay for the Italy trip, new furniture, everything. She's so guilty about being a bad mother, she'll give me anything. It's pathetic. Delphine. Don't get cocky. Focus on the long game. We need the beach house next. Can you convince Dee to ask for it? Sienna. Working on it. Once we have the beach house, I'll start pushing for investment accounts. She has millions just sitting there. Dee's her only child. She'll want to help us invest for our future. One more from just 2 weeks ago. Sienna. Talk to lawyer again. With 3 years of marriage, my sacrificed career opportunities, LOL, and his fertility issues, I'm looking at minimum $400K settlement plus ongoing support. Maybe more if I play it right. Then I can finally get away from this boring life and Dee's mommy issues. Delphine. What about the Ferrari? That was impulsive. Sienna. Had to do something. Getting antsy. Besides, you needed a car, and watching Margot's face was priceless. Worth it for the entertainment value alone. Don't worry, she won't do anything. She's too scared of losing Dee. I read through dozens more, each one worse than the last. Plans to isolate Damien further. Discussions of his medical information that he thought was private. Calculations of how much they could extract before moving to the exit strategy. And one message that made everything suddenly clear. Sienna to Delphine, dated 6 months ago. You were right about everything, Mom. Rich people are so easy to manipulate. They think money solves everything, so they throw it at problems instead of actually addressing them. Margot's guilt makes her the perfect target. She'd give us her entire fortune if it meant Dee would forgive her for being an absent mother. I sat there staring at my computer screen, and I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Not anger, not sadness, something colder, something harder, pure, calculated rage. These women had come into my family, targeted my grief and my guilt, manipulated my son, stolen from both of us, and planned to destroy what was left of my family for profit. And they thought I was too weak, too guilty, too desperate to stop them. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I didn't build an $18 million empire by being weak. I built it by being strategic, patient, and absolutely ruthless when necessary. They wanted to play games with my family? Fine. Game on. I printed every single message, every text, every email, every piece of evidence that Daniel had uncovered, compiled them into a folder that grew thicker with each page that slid out of my printer. The sound of the printer humming in my study at midnight felt like a countdown, a timer ticking down to something inevitable. Damien was asleep in the guest room. Finally, after I'd given him something to help him rest. He didn't know about the messages yet, didn't know the full scope of what his wife had planned. Part of me wanted to protect him from that knowledge, to spare him the complete devastation of seeing those words in black and white. But protection had gotten us here. Silence had gotten us here. My fear of losing him had made both of us vulnerable. No more protection, only truth. I was organizing the documents into chronological order when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mrs. Sinclair? A woman's voice, hesitant, young. Yes. Who is this? My name is Rachel Chen. I'm a paralegal at Morrison & Associates. I work with Daniel Morrison. I'm calling because there's something he found that he thought you should know about immediately, and he asked me to reach you tonight. My heart started pounding. What is it? We were able to access some additional records through public databases. Mrs. Sinclair. Sienna filed for divorce papers 3 days ago. She hasn't served them yet, but they're prepared and ready. She's claiming irreconcilable differences and requesting significant financial compensation based on sacrificed career opportunities and emotional distress. The room tilted. 3 days ago, before the Ferrari incident. Yes, ma'am. The Ferrari transfer appears to have been a deliberate provocation. She was trying to create a situation where either you'd explode and give her evidence of family hostility, or you'd stay silent and prove you were controllable. Either way, she wins. She gets leverage for her divorce case. Does Damien know she filed? Based on the filing, no. She hasn't served him. She's waiting for something. Mr. Morrison believes she's trying to transfer more assets first, or perhaps she's building a stronger case. But Mrs. Sinclair, there's something else. I gripped the phone tighter. Tell me. The divorce filing includes a claim that your son knew about his fertility issues before marriage and deliberately hid them from her, denying her the opportunity to have children. She's using that as primary grounds for compensation. She's claiming fraud and emotional devastation. I thought about my son sleeping upstairs, carrying that secret shame, believing he was protecting everyone by handling it privately. And his wife had discovered it, stolen that information, and weaponized it against him. How did she find out? About his medical condition? We're not entirely sure, but there's a credit card charge on his account from 6 months ago for a medical records retrieval service. $50. It's possible she ordered his records using his insurance information. It's illegal, but it happens, and it's hard to prove. Is that everything? No, ma'am. One more thing. Sienna has been in contact with a journalist, a woman who writes for one of those online publications that covers wealthy family disputes. Based on text messages, she's been considering selling her story. Rich mother-in-law tries to control young couples' life through financial manipulation. That kind of angle. The air left my lungs. A public smear campaign. Not just stealing from us, but destroying our reputations in the process. Thank you for calling me, I said quietly. Please tell Daniel I'll need everything documented and ready for my lawyer first thing tomorrow morning. I hung up and sat in the silence of my study. Outside, I could hear wind in the trees, the distant sound of a car on the road beyond my gates. Normal sounds, the world continuing on while mine collapsed and rebuilt itself simultaneously. She'd filed for divorce 3 days ago, before the Ferrari, before the confrontation at my house, before any of this exploded into the open. Which meant the Ferrari wasn't the crisis. It was the setup. She wanted me to react badly, wanted me to threaten her, to be the controlling monster she was already painting me as in legal documents, wanted me to give her evidence to support her narrative. And I'd almost done it, almost played right into her hands, but something had stopped me. Some instinct that told me to investigate first, to understand the full picture before acting. The same instinct that had made me successful in business. The ability to see 3 moves ahead, to recognize when someone was trying to manipulate me into a particular response. I thought about all the ways this could play out. I could fight the divorce, drag it through courts, expose her manipulation. But that would take years, cost a fortune, and damage Damien publicly in the process. His medical privacy would be violated. His personal struggles would become public record. I could pay her off, give her whatever she was asking for, and make her go away. But that would teach her that this strategy works. She'd do it again to someone else, and it would leave Damien believing his mother bought his freedom, confirming every toxic narrative Sienna had planted about me using money to control his life. Or I could do what I do best, play the long game, be strategic, give them exactly enough rope to hang themselves. I opened my laptop and started drafting an email to James Patterson. Detailed everything I knew, attached all the evidence, outlined what I wanted to happen next. Then I did something that surprised even me. I called Delphine Rosewood. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice thick with sleep. "Hello? Delphine, this is Margot Sinclair. I'm sorry to call so late, but I wanted to speak with you privately, mother to mother." A pause. I could almost hear her calculating, trying to figure out what game I was playing. "Margot, it's midnight. I know. I couldn't sleep. I've been thinking about our situation, and I realize I may have overreacted last night. Family is important. And you're right. I do have resources that could be shared more generously." Another pause, longer this time. "I'm listening. I'd like to invite you to lunch. Tomorrow. Just you and me. I think we got off on the wrong foot, and I'd like to make amends. Perhaps we can discuss how to best support both of our children going forward." "What about Sienna?" "I think Sienna and I need some space right now. But you and I, we're both mothers who want what's best for our children. I think we can find common ground. Bring the Ferrari if you like. We can discuss how to handle the title transfer properly, make everything legal and clean." I could practically hear her salivating through the phone. She thought I was capitulating, thought guilt and fear were making me fold. "Where and when?" she asked. "The Greenwich Country Club. 1 o'clock. I'll make a reservation in my name. I'll be there." I hung up and allowed myself a small, cold smile, because Delphine didn't know that the Greenwich Country Club had security cameras everywhere, didn't know that I'd arranged for Daniel Morrison to be having lunch there at the same time, recording everything, didn't know that I was about to give her exactly what she wanted, just enough confidence to speak freely, just enough false security to tell me everything. And once I had her confession on tape, recorded with her full knowledge that we were in a public place having a voluntary conversation, I would have everything I needed. Not for a messy court battle, not for a public scandal, for a private meeting with Sienna where I'd present her with a choice. Sign away all rights to Damien and our family with a minimal settlement and an ironclad non-disclosure agreement, or I'd take everything I'd found to the police, the bar association where her divorce lawyer worked, and yes, to that journalist she'd been talking to, except I'd give them the real story. Sometimes the best way to win a war isn't to fight every battle. Sometimes you just need to make your enemy realize they've already lost. I looked at the clock. 6 hours until my lunch with Delphine. 6 hours to finish preparing. 6 hours until the turning point. I poured myself one more whiskey, raised the glass to the darkness outside my window, and whispered, "Checkmate." The Greenwich Country Club looked exactly as it always did. Pristine, elegant, dripping with old money and older traditions. I arrived 15 minutes early, dressed in a cream Chanel suit that cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. Power dressing isn't about impressing others. It's about reminding yourself who you are. Daniel Morrison was already there, seated 3 tables away with a newspaper and what looked like a business lunch. We didn't acknowledge each other. He had a recording device that looked like a phone charging pad on his table, perfectly legal in Connecticut, where only one party needed to consent to recording. I was that party. Delphine arrived exactly on time, and I had to admire her audacity. She pulled up in my son's Ferrari, valeted it right in front of the club entrance like she owned it, walked in wearing a designer dress I recognized as vintage Dior, probably one of the pieces she'd held onto from her glory days. Her blonde hair was perfect, her makeup flawless, her smile practiced. She thought she was meeting a desperate woman ready to negotiate surrender. She had no idea. "Margot," she said warmly, leaning in for an air kiss that I accepted with equal false warmth. "Thank you so much for reaching out. I really do think we can work through this situation like rational adults." "I hope so, Delphine. Please sit. I've ordered us champagne. I thought we should start this conversation on a celebratory note." Her eyes lit up. Champagne meant money, meant capitulation, meant victory. The server poured 2 glasses of Dom Perignon, $300 a bottle. I watched Delphine take a sip and relax into her chair, her guard dropping incrementally. "I've been thinking a lot about what Sienna said," I began carefully. "About family helping family, about how fortunate I've been, and how difficult things have been for you and Thomas since the financial crisis." "It has been challenging," Delphine agreed, her voice taking on that practiced tone of dignified suffering. "We lost everything, you know. Thomas's business, our savings, our position in society. We've had to make do with so much less than we were accustomed to. That must have been terribly difficult. And I can see how, from your perspective, my wealth might seem excessive when you're struggling. Not just excessive, Margot. It seems unfair. You came from nothing, and you have everything. We came from something, and we have nothing. Life is cruel that way." I took a sip of my champagne. "Tell me, Delphine, what do you think would be fair? How do you think this situation should be resolved?" She leaned forward, and I saw the calculation in her eyes. The predator sensing wounded prey. "I think you should recognize that Damien and Sienna are building a life together. They're young. They have their whole future ahead of them. Sienna has sacrificed her career to support Damien's ambitions. She's been a devoted wife. She deserves security. And the Ferrari? You feel you deserve that? I think it's a reasonable compensation for the years of hardship we've endured. And honestly, Margot, what's one car to you? You have multiple properties, investment accounts, millions in liquid assets. You could buy 10 Ferraris without blinking." "That's true. I could." I paused, let the silence stretch. "Tell me something. When did you and Sienna start planning this?" Her face didn't change, but I saw her fingers tighten on her champagne glass. "Planning what?" "The extraction, the manipulation, using my guilt about being an absent mother to systematically drain resources from my family. When did that plan begin?" "I don't know what you're talking about." I pulled out my phone, opened the folder of screenshots Daniel had sent me, slid the phone across the table. "I think you do. Those are text messages between you and your daughter. 2 years of detailed planning, discussing how easy I am to manipulate, calculating how much you can take before moving to what you call the exit strategy." The color drained from her face. She picked up the phone with shaking hands, scrolled through the messages. I watched her realize that everything was there. Every cruel word, every calculated move, every cold assessment of how to best exploit my family. "Where did you get these?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "I own the phone account. Corporate plan, remember? You might want to read the terms of service more carefully in the future. But let's not get distracted by details. Let's talk about what happens next." She put the phone down, and I saw her try to regroup, saw her calculating new angles, new strategies. These are private conversations. They can't be used in court. It's an invasion of privacy. Actually, in Connecticut, I have every right to access records on accounts I own. But you're right, a court battle would be messy, expensive, public, which is why I'm offering you an alternative. "What kind of alternative?" I pulled out a folder from my bag, placed it on the table between us. Inside this folder is everything. Every message, every transaction, every piece of evidence of fraud, manipulation, and attempted extortion. Also in this folder is a copy of Sienna's divorce filing, which she hasn't served yet, but which I know about, and documentation of how she illegally obtained my son's private medical records. Delphine's hand trembled as she reached for the folder. She opened it, started reading. With each page, she seemed to shrink smaller into her chair. Now, I continued, my voice pleasant, conversational. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to go home and have a very serious conversation with your daughter. You're going to explain to her that she has exactly two choices. I'm not doing anything until I talk to a lawyer. Oh, by all means, talk to a lawyer. In fact, I encourage it. Have them explain to you what happens when someone obtains medical records through fraudulent means. Have them explain what conspiracy to commit fraud looks like. Have them explain what happens when someone files for divorce based on information they obtained illegally. I leaned forward. But here's what you need to understand, Delphine. I didn't come from money. I built everything I have from nothing, and I did it by being smarter and more ruthless than everyone who tried to stop me. You thought you were playing games with a guilty, desperate woman. You were wrong. You're playing games with someone who has spent decades learning how to destroy people who threaten what's mine. The server approached to take our order. I smiled at her warmly. We'll both have the salmon, thank you. When the server left, I continued. Here's choice one for Sienna. She signs a separation agreement I've had drawn up. She walks away with $50,000, which is generous considering she's contributed exactly zero to the marriage financially. She signs a non-disclosure agreement preventing her from discussing our family publicly or with any media. She returns all gifts that haven't already been sold, and she never contacts Damien or me again. That's insane. She's entitled to far more than that under Connecticut law. Perhaps, if she wants to fight for it. Which brings me to choice two. She refuses my offer, and I take everything I've found to the police. I file charges for fraud regarding the Ferrari transfer. I file charges for illegally obtaining medical records. I provide all of your lovely text messages to every media outlet in Connecticut, and I make sure everyone knows exactly who you both are and what you tried to do. You wouldn't. The scandal would hurt Damien too. It would. And that's a price I'm willing to pay to protect him from you long term. Because right now, he's humiliated, but he'll recover. If I let this continue, if I let Sienna proceed with her divorce plan and her media campaign, she'll destroy him completely. So yes, I'll burn it all down if I have to. The difference between you and me, Delphine, is that I actually love my child more than I love comfort. Our salmon arrived. I picked up my fork and started eating. Delphine sat frozen, staring at her plate. Eat, I said pleasantly. It's excellent here. You should enjoy it. It's the last meal I'll ever buy you. She didn't touch her food. What about the Ferrari? The Ferrari is going to be returned to Damien within 24 hours, or I'm filing a police report for theft by fraud. Your choice. Sienna won't agree to any of this. Then she'll face the consequences. But Delphine, I want you to really think about what those consequences look like. You're already drowning in debt. A legal battle with me would bankrupt you completely. I have unlimited resources to fight this for years. How long can you last? I took another bite of salmon. Let that sink in. And beyond the money, think about your reputation, whatever's left of it. Right now, some people might still remember you as the Rosewood who fell on hard times. If this goes public, everyone will know you as the woman who raised a daughter to be a con artist, who conspired to defraud and extort a grieving widow and her son. That's what your legacy will be. She was crying now, mascara starting to run. I felt no sympathy. This woman had helped orchestrate an attack on my family, had raised her daughter to be a predator, had celebrated every manipulation, every stolen dollar, every moment of pain they caused. I need time, she whispered, to talk to Sienna, to figure this out. You have until tomorrow at 6 p.m. The papers are in that folder. Sienna signs them in front of my lawyer, or I proceed with criminal charges Monday morning. That's less than 30 hours. Yes, I'm not a patient woman when someone threatens my child. I pulled out an envelope, placed it on the table. Inside this envelope is a check for $5,000. Consider it a gesture of goodwill. Use it to consult with a lawyer if you want. Use it to help with your mortgage payment. I don't care. But that's the last money you'll ever see from me or my family. Delphine grabbed the envelope with shaking hands. She looked broken, defeated. Nothing like the confident woman who'd walked in 45 minutes ago. Why are you doing this? She asked. Why not just let her divorce him and be done with it? Because she doesn't get to destroy my son and profit from it. Because I won't teach him that people can abuse him and walk away rich. And because I won't let you and your daughter continue this pattern with the next family you target. I finished my salmon, dabbed my mouth with my napkin. Oh, and Delphine? I know about the journalist. If one word of this appears in any publication, the deal is off and I unleash everything. That includes your name, your address, your financial records, all of it. I will make sure you can never show your face in polite society again. I stood up, picked up my bag. The check has been settled. You can leave whenever you're ready. I suggest you go have that conversation with your daughter now. Clock's ticking. I walked out of the country club without looking back. The valet brought my car around. I tipped him $50 because he looked like he needed it and because I could. Daniel Morrison called as I drove through the gates. Got everything. Crystal clear audio, backup recording, the works. She admitted to the planning, confirmed the manipulation. If we need it for court, it's solid. We won't need it for court. She's going to convince Sienna to sign. How can you be sure? Because Delphine is a coward. She spent her entire adult life taking the easy path, living off her husband's success until that dried up, then trying to live off mine through her daughter. When faced with real consequences, real fight, she'll fold. I drove home and found Damien in my kitchen making coffee. He looked like he'd aged 5 years in 2 days. Mom, where were you? Having lunch with Delphine. His eyes widened. What? Why? Because sometimes the fastest way to end a war is to show your enemy they've already lost. I sat down and told him everything. The messages, the divorce filing, the medical records theft, the journalist, the lunch conversation, the ultimatum. I watched him process it all, watched grief and anger and humiliation, and finally, a spark of something else. Strength, resolve. What happens if she doesn't sign? He asked quietly. Then we fight. Together. And we win. Because, Damien, we have something they don't have. What's that? The truth. And unlimited resources to make sure everyone knows it. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at me with something I hadn't seen in his eyes in years. Respect. Real respect. Not the obligatory kind children give parents. I'm sorry, he said, for not seeing it sooner. For not believing you when you tried to warn me. You have nothing to be sorry for. You loved someone. That's never wrong. What she did with that love, that's on her, not you. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. I opened it. We'll be at your lawyer's office tomorrow at 5 p.m. Sienna will sign, but I want you to know you've destroyed our lives. I showed Damien the text. He read it, and then, surprisingly, he laughed. Hard, bitter laugh. She thinks we destroyed their lives. That's actually funny. They'll recover. People like that always do. They'll find another target, another scheme. But it won't be us. I texted back, 5 p.m. tomorrow. Don't be late. Then I blocked the number. Because I was done. Done with their drama, their manipulation, their poison. Tomorrow, this would end. And my son and I could finally begin to heal. They arrived at James Patterson's office at exactly 5 p.m. the next day. Sienna looked like she hadn't slept, her face bare of makeup, her hair pulled into a messy ponytail. Gone was the polished, confident woman who'd stood on my doorstep 2 days ago announcing she'd given my Ferrari to her mother. This version looked hollow, defeated. Delphine wasn't with her. Smart. She knew better than to show her face. James had prepared everything with his usual meticulous precision. The separation agreement was 30 pages of ironclad legal language. $50,000. Return of all remaining gifts. Non-disclosure agreement with penalties of $500,000 for any breach. No alimony. No claims to any properties, accounts, or future assets. Clean break. Sienna sat across from me in James's conference room. Damien was there too. At my insistence. He needed to see this. Needed to witness the end. I want to say something before I sign, Sienna said quietly. James started to object, but I held up my hand. Let her speak. She looked at Damien, not at me. Her eyes were red from crying. I did love you. At the beginning. That was real. Don't. Damien's voice was flat, emotionless. Don't try to rewrite history now. I heard the messages. I know what you said about me, about us, about my mother. You don't get to claim love after that. My mother pushed me. She was in my ear constantly, telling me we deserved more, that your family owed us something. I got lost in it. You were an adult, I said quietly. You made choices. Own them. She finally looked at me. You're right. I did make choices. Bad ones. And I'm sorry. For what that's worth. It's worth nothing, Damien said. Sorry doesn't fix the past year of lies. Doesn't fix you stealing my medical information. Doesn't fix you planning to humiliate me publicly over something I was ashamed of. Sienna flinched. I never wanted to hurt you. But you were willing to. That's what matters. James pushed the documents across the table. If we're done with statements, we need signatures. 3 copies, initial each page, sign at the end. I watched Sienna pick up the pen. Her hand was shaking. She started initialing pages, working through the stack mechanically. When she got to the final signature page, she paused. This is really it? After I sign this, I never see you again? That's correct, James said. No contact. The separation agreement includes a no contact clause. Any violation constitutes breach of contract. She signed. 3 times, her signature getting messier with each iteration. James collected the documents, verified everything was in order. The $50,000 will be wired to the account you provided within 24 hours. You have 72 hours to return any remaining items that belong to the Sinclair family. After that, Mrs. Sinclair reserves the right to pursue criminal charges for any unreturned property. The Ferrari is already back, Sienna said quietly. I had my mom drive it to Damien's house this morning. Good. James stood up. Then we're done here. Mrs. Rosewood Sinclair, you're free to go. She stood slowly, gathered her purse, looked at Damien one more time. I really am sorry. I hope someday you can believe that. I believe you're sorry you got caught, Damien said. That's all. She left. I heard her heels clicking down the hallway, getting fainter until the sound disappeared entirely. James closed his folder. That's that. Clean resolution. No court, no publicity, no mess. Thank you, James. Send me your bill. Already done. Should hit your email tonight. Damien and I walked out to the parking lot together. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Beautiful evening. The kind Richard used to love. How do you feel? I asked. He was quiet for a long moment. Empty, relieved, humiliated, angry, grateful, all of it at once. That's normal. Is it? Because I don't feel normal. I feel like an idiot who wasted 3 years of his life on someone who saw him as a paycheck. I stopped walking, turned to face him. You're not an idiot. You're someone who trusted and loved. She's the one who should be ashamed, not you. I should have seen it. You tried to warn me. All those little comments, those looks you'd give when she'd say something. I ignored you because I thought you were being overprotective. I was being overprotective. Just turns out I was also right. I touched his face, the way I did when he was small. Damien, you're 32 years old. You have an excellent career. You're healthy, smart, kind. You have your whole life ahead of you. This is a painful chapter, but it's just a chapter, not the whole story. What if I can't trust anyone again? What if this broke something in me? Then we'll fix it, together. You'll talk to a therapist. You'll take time to heal. You'll eventually meet someone who deserves you. And when you do, you'll be smarter, stronger, more careful. But Damien, don't let her take your ability to love away. That's the one thing you can't let her steal. He hugged me then, hard, the way he used to when he was a child and something scared him. I held my son and let him cry out 3 years of manipulation and betrayal. When he finally pulled back, he wiped his eyes. Can I stay with you for a while? I'm not ready to go back to that house yet. You can stay as long as you need. We'll figure everything out. The house, the divorce, all of it. One step at a time. We drove home in convoy, his car following mine through the familiar streets of Greenwich. When we pulled into my driveway, I felt something loosen in my chest. We were home. Safe. Together. That night, we ordered Chinese food and ate it in my living room like we used to when he was in high school and Richard was working late. We didn't talk about Sienna or Delphine or any of it. We watched an old movie, something mindless and funny, and just existed in the same space without drama or tension. Around midnight, Damien went to bed. I stayed up, sitting in my study with a glass of wine, looking at the framed photos on my walls, properties I'd developed, buildings I'd designed, deals I'd closed, my legacy in real estate. But the real legacy was sleeping upstairs in my guest room. My son, bruised but not broken, betrayed but not destroyed. I pulled out my phone and opened my messages, found the thread with Daniel Morrison. "Thank you for everything. Send your final invoice." His response came quickly. "Already sent. Pleasure working with you. Your son is lucky to have you." I smiled, typed back, "I'm lucky to have him." The next few months were about rebuilding. Damien moved back into his house once we'd had it professionally cleaned, and he'd donated or thrown away anything that reminded him of Sienna. He started seeing a therapist, working through the manipulation and betrayal. Slowly, I watched him come back to himself. He also saw a fertility specialist I connected him with. Turned out his condition was treatable. Not hopeless like he'd feared. That knowledge alone seemed to lift a weight off his shoulders. 6 months after the separation was finalized, Damien met someone new. Rachel, a literature professor at Yale. Smart, genuine, with kind eyes and a quiet strength. When he brought her to dinner for the first time, I watched them together carefully. Watched how she listened to him, how she respected his boundaries, how she laughed at his jokes without performing. "What do you think?" Damien asked me later, after Rachel had gone home. "I think she's lovely. But more importantly, what do you think?" "I think I'm terrified and hopeful and taking it very, very slowly." "That's exactly right. Trust yourself. Trust your instincts. They're good instincts. You just had them overridden for a while. If we ever get serious, I'm getting a prenup." "Smart man. I raised you well." He laughed, real laugh. The sound filled my kitchen and made my heart feel full. A year after everything imploded, Damien and Rachel got engaged. She insisted on signing a prenuptial agreement before he even asked. "I'm marrying you, not your family's money," she told him. I liked her more after that. The wedding was small, intimate, nothing like the elaborate production Sienna had demanded. Just family and close friends at my beach house in the Hamptons. Rachel's parents were warm, genuine people who worked as teachers and seemed genuinely happy for their daughter. During the reception, Damien pulled me aside. "I never thanked you properly. For saving me. For fighting for me when I couldn't fight for myself. That's what mothers do. We fight for our children. Not all mothers. Some just buy their love with money and call it close enough." I thought about that. About all the years I'd tried to compensate for absence with generosity. I made mistakes. I let guilt drive too many decisions. I'm still learning. We both are. But Mom, what you did, standing up to Sienna and Delphine, that wasn't about money. That was about protection, about love. I see that now. I kissed his cheek. "Go dance with your wife. Be happy. That's all I want." I watched him walk back to Rachel, watched them sway to the music on my patio overlooking the ocean. The sun was setting, painting everything gold. Richard would have loved this, would have loved seeing our son find real love, real partnership. I raised my glass to the sunset, to my husband's memory, to my son's future. I'd built an empire in real estate, made millions, owned properties across 2 states. But this, right here, watching my son heal and love again, this was my real success. This was what mattered. Not the money, not the properties, not the power. Family, real family. The kind built on love and truth, not manipulation and extraction. I'd almost lost it, almost let fear and guilt destroy us both. But I'd fought back, and we'd won. The Ferrari sat in my garage now. Damien said he didn't want it anymore. Too many bad memories. I understood. Maybe someday I'd sell it, or maybe I'd keep it as a reminder that some gifts come with hidden prices, and that sometimes the most loving thing a mother can do is not give everything her child asks for, but protect everything he truly needs. I watched the sun disappear below the horizon, felt the warm evening breeze, heard laughter from the reception behind me. This was my resolution, not the legal documents or the signatures or the money transferred. This, peace, healing, truth, family rebuilt on stronger foundations, and I was finally at peace with all of it, with my choices, with my mistakes, with my fierce, protective love. I was Margot Sinclair. I'd built an empire from nothing, But my greatest achievement was standing on that dance floor, holding his wife, finally free. That was everything.